I'm Nikki.
And I'm Jess.
She's the traumatized.
And she's the abandoned.
And welcome to our podcast. Where we talk about true crime, spooky things, and everything in between.
And today, we're going to be telling some true crime-ish stories. I feel like mine's a true crime.
Mine's
We'll see.
Definitely true crime.
Okay, I'm like 90. I'm pretty sure it's true crime. Nobody was murdered in my story, but I don't think that qualifies as a true crime, right?
I mean, I think we're kind of doing like all crime under true crime.
Okay,
because
like absolutely.
I want to do a fraud case down the line.
Yeah.
So that'll probably be like bunched in here.
Yes,
yeah.
we're doing true crime stories today.
And it's been a pretty eventful week. If you're on YouTube, you can see that my shelves are empty because we are in the process of moving right now.
Woohoo! We decided to start a podcast
in the midst moving.
of her moving because we like to challenge ourselves. But you know what? The first like 3 or 4 weeks are going to be hectic, but then not only are we going to have the swing of things, but then you're not going to be moving anymore. Well, so it's going to just be coasting.
Anyways, okay. Fun fact of the day.
This was totally thought about before just now.
Totally prepared.
110%. Did you know about 700 grapes go into one bottle of wine? And that equates to approximately 2.6 pounds of fruit that you're getting in wine. So basically, you can drink wine and have consumed that many grapes. Drink more wine if you're older than 21.
If you're of age.
Yes.
You're of drinking age in your current country.
Yes, drink wine. It's good for you. So your story. Oh my gosh, I'm so excited.
Okay, so this one's an interesting one.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a cold case.
I love cold cases.
Okay, so
I hate cold cases, but I love them.
The year was 2009, and LAPD homicide detective Jim Nuttall walked into work in the early hours of the morning to find an old file box on his desk. The box was left on his desk to be looked over before it made its way to archive or deep storage. Nuttall, with his fresh cup of coffee, found in the box a 20-year-old murder case. He began reading through the first murder book of 4 volumes, and what he saw piqued his interest. A murder book is basically all the evidence, and so there was 4 volumes, so there were 4 like binders full of of the evidence and of the case, basically.
Interesting. Okay.
John Rutan and Sherri Rasmussen, newly married, only 3 months, lived in a condo in a gated community in a subdivision of Los Angeles. On the morning of February 24th, 1986, John left for work while his wife Sherri had called in sick. John arrived at work around 8 a.m., and around 10 a.m., he called home to see how Sherri was doing, but he got no answer. He tried again later in the day, and still no answer. Around 5 p.m., John headed home from work, but John sensed that something was wrong when he pulled up to his condo, and the garage door was open. And Sherri's car was gone. His unease became worse as he saw that the door to the condo was also wide open.
I instantly think he killed her. What is wrong with me? I think... Keep going, sorry.
When he went in...
He's guilty.
He's guilty. Well, is he?
Yes.
We'll find 100%. Out.
He killed her.
When he went inside, John saw in the middle of the disheveled living room, Sherri lying motionless on her back in the same morning clothes that she was in when he left that morning.
Oh shit. Okay.
So I'm gonna backtrack a little bit. I'm gonna leave you with that.
Oh, thank you, M. Night Shyamalan. I love it.
And I'm going to talk about Sherri, because she was truly an extraordinary person. On February 7th, 1950...
Is this the dead person?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
So, On February 7th, 1957, Sherri Ray was born to Loretta and Nels Rasmussen. So the Rasmussens were a loving and tight-knit family, raising 3 girls in Tucson, Arizona. Along with being very active, Sherri was an eager and naturally disciplined student. She was very intelligent, resulting in her skipping 7th grade and even graduating at the end of junior year. So she skipped 2 grades.
Damn. Okay.
Sherri was described as happy and extremely intelligent, but also serious-minded. Sherri began college classes in September 1973 at just 16 years old. During her freshman year, she decided to follow her sister and aunt in pursuing a career in nursing. Sherri excelled as a nurse, and anyone who worked with Sherri could tell that she had a special gift, which she tried to use to help other people. So basically, Sherri was natural at being it.
Oh, that's cool.
So Sherri got her master's degree from UCLA in March of 1980 at age 23.
Masters at 23? Okay. I see you.
She did consider medical school as her father wanted her to, but because she eventually wanted to have a family down the line, she decided to just stick with nursing. But of course, that didn't stop her from having a flourishing career. Having worked at UCLA Medical Center for 6 years, she was hired as Director of Critical Care Nursing at Glendale Adventist in 1984.
Wow.
Sherri was likely one of the youngest nursing directors in the country.
Damn. Good for her.
She carried herself professionally and was a natural leader. At age 28, Sherri met John at a party, and after nearly a year of dating, they became engaged in May of 1985.
Okay.
Instead of an engagement ring, Sherri opted for a new and more reliable car, a BMW.
Oh. Wait. Engagement ring equals BMW?
Instead of like spending a couple $1,000s on like a diamond ring, they put it like a down payment.
Like a down payment
on the
Got
car.
it. Okay. That makes more sense. I'm like, listen.
And they were married that same year on November 23rd, 1985. Which brings us back to the day of the murder. As I said, John came home to find Sherri dead in their living room. The detectives assigned to the case, Lyle Mayer and Steve Hooks, arrived at the scene and were under the impression that it was a burglary gone wrong. The living room was disheveled and there was a stereo system pulled out and stacked at the bottom of the stairs. To explain the condo layout, it's thin and tall. So the garage is a sub basement garage. So it goes down. And then there's like a short little stairs that goes into the living room, which you can see from the picture there. And then those stairs go up to the second floor. So it's kind of like a half floor, if that makes sense.
Oh, it's like a split level.
Yeah, it's like a split level.
Okay.
And then there's a third level, like a full staircase that goes up to the bedroom.
Okay.
You have the living room, a small set of stairs into the dining room, and then in the dining room is the second staircase that goes up to the bedrooms, and then the kitchen is behind the dining room.
Okay.
Okay. So they thought that the burglar was in the middle of what they were doing when they were surprised by Sherri coming down the stairs. So the detectives believe the fight started on the second floor, like the dining room area, and then carried on to the first floor into the living room. And Sherri fought for her life. Sherri was not a small person herself. She was 6'1" and very athletic.
Okay. How big was John? Are we getting there?
John was like 6'2", 6'3". He was taller than her. That's why she like one of the things she loved about him, because when you're tall and confident, it's hard to find somebody who can like who's not shy from that, you know, who doesn't like back away from that.
Yep.
So I'm gonna go into her injuries a little bit, just to give you like an idea. I don't go into graphic detail, but Sherri was hit over the head with a vase. which was like shattered across the floor. She seemed to have been pistol whipped.
Damn.
She had
Okay.
extensive blunt force trauma to the head and eventually shot 3 times in the chest. She had so much blunt force trauma to the head that the paramedics, when they got there, they didn't even notice the gunshot wounds.
Jesus. Okay.
There was also evidence that the intruder had tried to bind her. There was a bloody palm print on the wall next to the panic button on the security system. So at one point, Sherri tried getting to the panic button on the security system,
Mhm.
and it was confirmed that it was like her palm print on the wall.
Yikes.
And then a bunch of her torn fingernails were, yeah. And also, last thing, she had a bite mark on her left forearm that the examiner actually swabbed.
I don't get the bite thing. Was she sexually assaulted?
No.
Or was it just the bite mark? Maybe she had somebody like and so they bit her to get them off? They're off?
That's most likely.
Right? Because like the only other thing is like, all right, you got a kink thing for vampirism or something. I don't know, but like, why else do you bite
No,
somebody?
I think it was like a self-defense mechanism that somebody.
That means she was close. Anyways, that's frustrating.
Yeah. So Sherri's purse and BMW were also missing. They were basically the only things missing. Oh, and her marriage license. Their marriage license.
That's weird.
John was so distraught that he couldn't even call Sherri's family. He had his father do.
Was he distraught or was he feeling guilty?
John was taken to the police station that same night for an interview. So Detective Mayer was the one who conducted the interview and cleared John. He did seemingly have an alibi, though. He said he was at work.
Okay, but that doesn't mean he didn't kill her before he left for work.
John also wouldn't talk to Sherri's family at all. When the family arrived at the police station, obviously they had questions. Like, you were there, you saw her. Like, tell us what you saw. Refused to speak to them. Never spoke to them about anything. He even distanced himself from the investigation. Like, he would not call and ask if they had found any new leads or anything. And he moved away a short time later.
How did they let him leave the area?
He was cleared. Detective Mayer cleared him.
They got tunnel vision.
But the detectives thought they were on the right track when another burglary occurred nearby to the condo. So 2 men had surprised a woman as they attempted to burglarize her home and actually pointed a gun at her, but eventually just ran away. Like, they just ran away. They didn't hurt her or harm her in any way.
Interesting. Okay.
Sherri's purse was found shortly after the murder by 2 men/gardeners. Some sources says it was gardeners. Other sources said it was just like 2 men, which I'm assuming it was the gardeners. Like, and given to a neighbor who then turned it in. Her BMW was also found nearly 2 weeks after the murder, fully intact, with the keys in the ignition.
Where?
I don't know where.
By a train station? Was it by an airport?
I don't.
Was it just on the side of the highway? Oh my god. That's so crazy. Why with the keys in the ignition? See, I keep forgetting she's dead. I'm like, oh, well, she's just missing. Maybe she did run off with somebody. No, she died. Interesting.
Yeah, nothing was taken from the car, which in LA in the 80s, just the fact that they took the car and didn't like scrap it for whatever purposes, or
they aren't burglars at that point because they weren't stealing the car. John. You're looking sus again.
Sherri's family never believed that it was a burglary and would encourage the police to look elsewhere. But soon, with no new leads, the case went cold. Eventually, when DNA became a thing, Nils, Sherri's father, even offered to pay for the testing, but the department said no, That's just
Why?
not how things work. I'm assuming they can't take it as like a donation or anything. Like it probably has to go through proper channels. You can't just have outside people paying for things. In 2001, Detective Cliff Shepard was assigned to a new unit focused on new testing technologies. He looked over the case and made a note to find the swab from the bite mark to have it tested. Because the swab was collected, but it was never handed over to like the evidence. If that makes sense.
Okay.
Jennifer Francis, a criminalist in the crime lab, saw the note and took it upon herself to try and find it, and she did.
Okay.
It was basically in the back of one of their like crime fridges or whatever, where they keep samples and stuff. It was in the back of one of their fridges. The envelope was in rough shape and the writing was faded, but the sample was still intact. So it took roughly a year to get it tested. But once she did, she notified Shepard and told him the DNA belonged to an unknown female.
Maybe it's John's mistress. No idea. What? Okay. Wow. Plot twist! Oh my god. I'm using my makeup sponge right now as a stress ball. Just to let you know. I'm like, I just used this on my face to do my makeup, and I'm like,
so Shepard, taking this information, now thought that he was looking for a male-female burglary team.
Oh, it's still on the burglary. Okay.
Yeah. Shortly after, he had to put it aside, though, put this case, and all his cases, because he was assigned to a new task force to find a serial killer. So, like, in the middle of him looking into this case, a serial killer popped up, and, like, he was selected to go to the team to...
Which one do you know?
I do not know. I didn't look.
Fuck.
Also, like, in his, like, little investigation that he did, if that's what you want to call it, he never once interviewed the family, stating that they were too far away, so they wouldn't know any information.
Okay.
Which brings us back to 2009 and Detective Nuttall. As Nuttall was reading through the case, everything seemed to fit the narrative that the original detectives had until he noticed one small detail.
One small. Okay.
On that stereo equipment at the bottom of the stairs was a drop of Sherri's blood, suggesting that whoever put it there had done so after the fight. And I mean, look at the picture. We'll show it on YouTube right now.
Okay.
If you look at the picture, the stereo equipment is stacked perfectly in the middle of the bottom of the stairs.
Yeah.
If the fight had started at the top of the stairs, like Sherri surprising her, and this fight started at the top of the stairs or on the second level and moved to the bottom in the living room, would those still be stacked perfectly like they are now?
No, they'd be strewn all over the floor.
Exactly. So he started with Homicide 101, which is starting inward and working your way out to look for a suspect, which the first detectives and pretty much every detective that worked on this case did not do. So he had 5 women that he suspected, who were close enough to her and would have possibly had a motive.
Okay.
First being her mom, second being her younger sister Teresa, who had actually lived with her for a while Teresa was going to school.
Okay.
Jane, her roommate, who had lived with her for like 3 or 4 years before she married John. A former nurse Sherri worked with that Sherri didn't select her for a promotion. So she was getting threats, and like she even had to have security walk her to her car for a while.
Okay.
And woman number 5.
Can I guess? Is it John's current wife?
No.
Damn it.
Wrong. Very quickly, the first 4 women would be cleared with DNA. So obviously her mom, her sister, and Jane all
Right.
gave their DNA because they want the case to be solved. So
Obviously. Yeah. Okay.
the fourth woman, the nurse, they just did a trash dive like they do. They collected her trash, found DNA, not a match.
Mm-hmm.
Which left us with woman number 5. And she was only to be called woman number 5 because, would you like to take a guess?
No, I've been wrong this entire time. I have tunnel vision right now. Why?
She was a member of the LAPD.
Oh, that is a plot twist.
Stephanie Lazarus was actually an ex-girlfriend of John's.
Mm-hmm.
Well,
Okay.
kinda. According to John, they were never really boyfriend and girlfriend. They were more like friends with benefits, as we would say nowadays.
Okay.
But Stephanie was in love with John. They met when both of them were in the same dorm at UCLA.
Mm-hmm.
When she graduated from UCLA, she went on to apply for the LAPD. She had a hard time letting go of John. She would randomly show up at John and Sherri's condo. One time asking John to wax her ski.
Okay, thought we were going somewhere completely different.
Sherri was very uncomfortable about it and asked John to stop doing things for her. Because she would call John, be like, hey, I need this done, and John would help her, over and over again. And Sherri's like, stop.
Right.
Stephanie would even supposedly show up to Sherri's work and confronted her. So basically, Stephanie was trying to intimidate Sherri by showing up at her condo. Just she would show up to the condo in her police uniform. And then she showed up to the hospital in these short shorts and this tight shirt to be like, yeah, I'm hot shit. So she showed up to Sherri's work and confronted her, which we'll discuss later. But after the engagement, Stephanie was distraught and called John. John went over to talk to her, and they ended up sleeping together.
That's a celebration. One that I would not recommend.
On this, so let me go. On the stand at the trial later, he would state that was the only way he knew how to comfort her.
With his penis.
But made it clear that he was going to stay with Sherri. So basically they were talking, he couldn't get her to calm down, so he slept with her.
It's a hell of a sedative. Also, she would definitely know how to stage a crime scene. 1,000%.
So Sherri found out about John sleeping with Stephanie. It's actually Stephanie's the one who told her when she confronted her at the hospital.
Of course she did.
But they talked it through and they still agreed to get married. John. Yeah. So when Detective Nuttall interviewed the family, they stated that they had told the initial investigators to look at Stephanie.
Of course they did.
But none of that was in the original files. In fact, in the Dateline interview with Sherri's father, her father said, yeah, I didn't know her name. I identified her as John's ex-girlfriend, the one who's a police officer.
Wow.
And the response he got from the detectives was, you watch too much television. John would say that he also told the detectives about Stephanie, but in his interview, the first interview conducted, he was specifically asked, does Sherri have any ex-boyfriends or you any ex-girlfriends that could have had a grudge or something? And he said no. But when Nuttall and his partner interviewed him in 2009, he said that he told the original detectives to look into Stephanie. But I'm going to throw this little tidbit in here now. A few years after the murder, him and Stephanie actually went on vacation to Hawaii together.
Weird.
Because Stephanie was one of their own now, a detective for art theft unit, and her current husband was also a detective in the exact same building as the homicide squad, they had to work behind closed doors after hours and made sure they did not leave a paper trail.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
And that's why she was only referred to as suspect number 5.
Just in case they did find it, she wouldn't. Gotcha.
Mhm.
Interesting.
A special surveillance unit was sent out to follow Stephanie and got her DNA from a soft drink she threw away. Basically, her and her daughter were at Costco. She ordered a soft drink, and they watched her throw it away in the trash, and they collected
That's
it.
kind of crazy they could just do that. Like,
Mm-hmm. And within 48 hours, the DNA came back a match.
and this is a cold case? I'm gonna need another stress ball.
Obviously, it's solved. Yes.
What do you mean? How could it be a solved cold case?
It was a cold case. It is solved now.
Currently, okay.
Okay, so they had the DNA match. They had pretty much everything they need. Now they just needed to interrogate her. But she still had her badge and her gun. So if they try to take her into interrogation, like guns ablazing, that they didn't want that to happen. Okay. So they devised a ruse. They went to her and said that they have a guy that they are investigating, and he said he said something about art theft, which obviously they have no idea about.
Right.
So could you come help us question this guy?
Okay.
And of course, having her ego fucking boosted, she's like, absolutely. So they brought her to the jail division where firearms need to be locked up.
Oh, nice, guys. I see you.
So, and then they brought her to an interrogation room, but there was no prisoner to talk to. Instead, the detectives had her sit down and began questioning her. Which, by the way, this full interrogation is online. You can watch this.
Oh, that's cool. Okay.
They asked if she knew John Rutten. They pronounced it wrong, and she corrected them. She's like, oh, do you mean John Rutten? Then questioned her about knowing Sherri and the murders. They're like, do you know what happened to his wife? She's like, yeah, she was like killed or something. And
by you. Sorry.
Eventually, through the questioning, Stephanie admitted that her and John dated in college, which obviously we know that they didn't actually date.
Right.
But anything pertaining to Sherri, she feigned forgetfulness. So they like would ask her, like, have you ever met Sherri? And she'd be like, well, I don't remember. It was like so long ago. You know, she would like keep being like, oh. Like,
yeah.
Though eventually admitted to the hospital thing, claiming that she went there to be like, well, if you guys are together, then like check your man because he's like hitting me up. Like that's what she says happened, which we obviously know that's not what happened.
Right.
But she was basically like, keep your man to hit yourself. Like tell him to stop bothering me.
Interesting. Okay.
Soon, though, Stephanie got the feeling that they were suspecting her because, like, the line of questioning kept, getting more suspicious. She's like, if you suspect me, then that's an issue. We've got a problem.
Yeah. Right.
And she entered the interview getting up to leave. As she left the room, though, another detective standing outside stopped her and cuffed her, leading her back into the room, and she was read her rights. So February 2012, the trial began, and the evidence was overwhelming. Stephanie was the only one who had the motive and the means. She was off that day and didn't have an alibi. Her DNA was in the bite mark left on Sherri. The bullets used in the murder matched those of LAPD officers used.
Oh, no.
And 13 days after the murder, Stephanie walked into a different police station that she didn't work at and reported her personal weapon stolen.
Okay.
And last but not least, her own journals she kept all that time showed how obsessed she was.
Wow.
The jury found her guilty and she was sentenced to 27 years to life.
Mm-hmm.
But with such an obvious suspect, why did it take over 20 years to solve this case? Especially when her father told them from the beginning to look for John's ex. Stephanie Lazarus was never questioned or even talked to until the
Wow.
2009 investigation.
Wow. That's insane.
So, was it incompetence or maybe something more sinister like a cover up? Were the cops covering their own
tracks?
We probably won't ever know. But
Mm.
that was the story of Sherri, a beautiful and bright human who only wanted to help people and maybe wanted to have a family of her own.
Yikes. Oh, that's sad. That's super sad.
Yeah.
My turn. You've never heard of
turn.
Dr. Cline
I don't think so, no.
and the infertility clinic? I actually am very shocked you've never heard about this. Okay. Buckle up. Our story begins August 2017. So this is very recent. BT dubs. When Heather Wook, I'm also probably pronouncing this wrong. It's Woock. 33-year-old woman who lived right outside of Indianapolis. She received a Facebook message from a random stranger. The stranger claimed to be her half sibling. According to DNA tests she had taken, Heather was going to ignore the message. She was packing for vacation. She was ready to get out town, take some well-deserved R&R time. But something stopped her. The stranger had mentioned Dr. Cline and his fertility treatment facility. This stopped her because she knew that her mother had been treated at Dr. Cline's office. So she called her mom. During the phone call, her mom said not to worry, to leave, enjoy the vacation, relax. So she left. During that vacation, she got a couple other messages from other strangers, also suggesting that they were her half siblings. She found their persistence strange, but then her phone ended up breaking. So she spent the last week and a half in peaceful bliss and just lived her best life.
Right.
When she got home, she replaced her phone and started looking further into it, and noticed that they had found her on Facebook using her username on Ancestry.com. Her husband had gotten her a DNA test for Christmas, so she did it. Her heritage had actually turned out exactly what she thought, but really hadn't bothered to click on the link that would show whether you have any shared DNA with anybody. Apparently she did. She did have relatives on the website, but they were just cousins. They were half siblings. And the people who had reached out to her also said they had been treated at Dr. Cline's clinic. So, little history. Dr. Cline had opened up his practice in 1979. He quickly became a well-known infertility specialist and rose to becoming one of the most renowned clinics in the area. He was the top fertility specialist in Indianapolis and the surrounding area.
Wow.
The story that had begun to emerge from the DNA was a questioning one, but it also contradicted what Dr. Cline had actually told his patients, because from the beginning, he had always said that his donors that he used were medical residents, and that he only used each donor for a maximum of 3 successful pregnancies. However, the website was showing that he had used this one donor at least 8 times. And the birth years of these resulting children were from 1979 to 1986.
So, just a quick question. Do you know why he only said that use them 3 times? Is that just so, like, that one donor doesn't have so many kids
Because you wouldn't want
on, like, ancestral things
you
happening?
wouldn't want children or siblings falling in love with each other and stuff like that, not knowing, because
Right.
usually you wouldn't talk about it. Another red flag was that the medical residencies usually only last a few years. So, what resident would be around to donate sperm for a 7-year period? 8 times. So, the answer, they assumed, the children, was in their DNA. No one in the database shared enough DNA with them to be their father, but they actually found dozens of more genetic matches. So they started combing through public records, social media profiles, sometimes simply just asking genetic matches about their family. They ended up building this ginormous tree.
Is this just, like, a group of the kids, like, together in, like, a Facebook group, like,
Yeah,
investigating their own
1,000%. Absolutely.
Wow.
There is a documentary on Netflix and it's called My Father. Definitely watch it. It's a
Okay.
good after this. After you
After
finish
this.
watching this, go watch that because it's really cool. It's super interesting. But basically, they were just trying to find their father. They all shared a father, and they wanted to know who. Not only to know, yeah, but like for medical purposes as well. It's really cool because now the technology. This was like in 2017. Thousands of adoptees and donor conceived children have used this method to find their biological parents. And forensic scientists now can use it to investigate cold cases. And the Golden State Killer was actually found using this technology,
Quite
like using the
recently
DNA.
too, right?
Yeah, he was found because of a genetic testing. He was just found like willy-nilly. I think he was like mowing his lawn in like a normal neighborhood with like kids.
Yeah.
And so as they continued to research their family tree, one suspiciously familiar name kept coming up. Cline. Finally, a woman who shared some of their DNA told them that they had a cousin named Donald Cline, who was a doctor in Indianapolis. At this point, they thought Dr. Cline had a brother or another male relative who had also served as a donor. Currently, there are 8 known half-siblings. They all confronted Dr. Cline, and according to the documentary, at this point, when they confronted him, super awkward, he
Yeah.
admitted to using his own sperm and had informed them that their parents' records had been destroyed.
What?
When asked, he stated there could be no more than 8 siblings. He had only done this 8 times.
I feel like that's not correct. I have a bad
It's
feeling.
not.
Oh no.
4 of the 8 siblings decided to file complaints with the Indiana's Attorney General, saying they suspected that Cline had used his own sperm in his patients and asking for an investigation. Jacoba. So basically, if you watch the documentary, there's one. I believe her last name is Ballard. It kind of focuses on her because she's the one that really found out. Was the first one to find out that she was related and started bringing everybody else on board. She reached out to so many people. Nobody would listen to her. Nobody would listen to her story except for this one reporter. I'm sorry, Jacoba is her name. And she reached out to the local TV station Fox 59. And it was a female newscaster, and she was like, nobody's listening to me. I need this story to get out. She was like, I'll do it. I was like, yes, you will. Thank God somebody's going to. Like,
Yeah.
it's insane.
That would be so frustrating. You're just trying to speak your truth and nobody's
listening. She reached out. The report was aired. However, they were not allowed to include Dr. Cline's name at this point. They had to be very vague, but it was kind of also a warning, like, hey, if you used an infertility clinic in Indianapolis, you should probably get your DNA tested just to make sure. So months after this aired, nothing was really happening. And then one of the half sisters decided she just couldn't wait any longer. She found Cline's legitimate children and his adult grandchildren on Facebook and sent a group message. Nobody responded at first. Nobody said they could help. Finally, Jacoba actually got a message from Dr. Cline's son. He had been looking through one of her Facebook pictures and recognized her priest, said, oh, he's Catholic too. So at that point, he decided to set up a meeting between his father and 6 of the siblings at a local restaurant.
Wait, so like, what was the purpose of reaching out to the family? Just to talk to Dr. Cline, basically? Okay.
So this kind of goes into the meeting a little more detailed. Dr. Cline was then in his late 70s and walked in with a cane. Jacoba remembers the first family reunion as strange, right? And very matter of fact. Dr. Cline had admitted to using his own sperm, and the records had been destroyed. He asked each of the siblings what they did and where they lived. He then read them Bible verses from a notepad. Jacoba mentioned that she really saw this as like a misguided attempt to like comfort her, and at one point snapped and was like, do not use my religion to make this okay, because this is not okay.
Right. Like, also, like, why did he ask them their occupation?
So there's a couple theories that the kids have. One of them's super sinister, kind of like implementing like a master race sort of thing. Like almost all of the kids have like blonde hair and blue eyes. And like it's this sort of churchy thing. It's almost cult like, where like you want to just spread the seed.
Almost like not only their looks, but maybe like his intelligence. If you thought he was highly intelligent, wanted to like,
yeah, and like spread his, you just it's gross. Such bad vibes. So the children at this meeting stated their biological father radiated like no paternal warmth. You know what I mean? Like didn't really give the father vibe.
Right.
Jacoba actually revealed at a later time that she really did struggle to have inherited the DNA of a man who would lie to his patients and abuse his power. She's like, she struggled with like, is that in me now? You know what I mean? Like, do I have the capability to do that? Kind of like, you know, if your parents are found a murderer,
you're now questioning yourself. Am I a murderer? Do I have the traits?
Like same thing. But you know what? I think if you're aware of it, and that's kind of what she came to the conclusion to, if you're aware of it, I think you overcome it and you become a better person because of it, because you know what to not do. Anyways, so they were really struggling. Just why would he do this, you know? Some of the thoughts that came to mind, again, was it a religious thing, or you know, was it a sexual thing?
I think I almost think it's like an arrogance thing. Like he's like, I can do this and nobody will know and I will be everywhere.
And everyone will have a little bit of me.
Yeah.
In them.
That's the vibes that I get.
He was definitely super proud of the children, that like knowing their occupation and knowing what they were doing with their lives was very important to him. And he would, you know, not give partiality to the ones that were doing better, but like oh, that's awesome, you know, he was really kind of weirdly proud of the ones who would do better.
I feel like he thinks it's an extension of himself. Yeah, instead of them being their own person, he thinks it's an extension of himself. So if they're doing a spectacular job, he thinks he's doing a spectacular job.
Yeah, yikes. Well, so some people, or some of the children, were like, oh, you know, is it a religious thing? Are we just a science experiment to him? You know, he wanted control. He had to maintain his business. I mean, if you break it down, it was helping his business. He was the most well-known fertility doctor in the area. So And then maybe he was just really thought he was helping people. Maybe he's that delusional. So that's kind of what the kids were saying while they were sitting around the table being like, what the hell? So after the meeting, Dr. Cline actually called Jacoba to tell her to stop because her digging up the past was destroying his marriage. And his wife would consider his actions adultery. And so he needed to stop. She needed to stop.
My guy, you should have thought of that when you were intentionally spreading your seed into women without their consent.
So, like I said, the call was being recorded. During the call, Dr. Cline did say he regretted what he had done, that he had used his sperm only 9 or 10 times, which had gone up from the 8 at the restaurant. And he finished the conversation by quoting Jeremiah 1:5.
No.
Do you know what Jeremiah 1:5 is?
No.
Before I formed you in your mother's womb, I knew you.
If you're religious, I'm so sorry. But, like...
To be fair, I am religious. Hi. But, like, first of all, that's God saying that. And, like, to me, that shows right there, he kind of viewed himself as a God complex. Like, he was like, I formed you in your mother's
Exactly
womb.
what I was saying earlier.
Mm-hmm.
Like, oh, God. Oh, I'm peeved.
Yeah, so... Like, again, kind of just going back to touch, he did open up the clinic in 1979, and the secretary would go and, retrieve the samples. She would retrieve some samples because there weren't any big sperm banks. There weren't catalogs, like I had said. So doctors usually did find the donors among medical trainees. So what he was saying had some validation. They usually already worked in your hospitals, and obviously... hospitals had reputations, or doctors had reputations, as successful young men.
Right.
But in the 1970s, just a little bit of history, hundreds of doctors were performing donor insemination across the U.S. A 1977 survey found that more than half the doctors did not keep records to leave, and that was in order to leave, like, no paper trail connecting the donor to the child. This was like a legality thing.
I feel like it's important to at least know certain aspects of the donor, like blood type, race, like all the things that you when you go to a general doctor, and all those questions that like, have you ever had this? I feel like that should at least be on there. Like, obviously you don't want your name associated, but like, all the health information should have been available, at least.
I agree.
Like, that's...
the biggest, like, thing I saw was because there weren't any laws in place to protect, so they would actually do it to kind of protect the donors so that they wouldn't get held for child support.
Again. That stuff can be prevented with, like, a contract, an NDA, of whatever 100%. Have you.
But, like, something should have been.
Yeah.
Shoulda, coulda, woulda.
Like, just not having any paperwork at all is not right.
And it's terrifying because it's like in this case, like, how do you know? Anyway, another story. Liz White had walked into Dr. Cline's office with her husband in 1981. They hadn't told anybody of their infertility troubles. And it wasn't until Dr. Cline was in the news 35 years later that Liz had even realized that her and her best friend had gone to him for treatment. They just didn't talk about that kind of stuff back then.
Right.
All of his patients, all the moms, saw him as a very kind and gentle man. He actually decorated his office of all the photos of the babies he had helped conceive, which now
no, he didn't.
Seems super icky.
Oh my god, he like even had that was like trophies to him. Oh my.
And those trophies sat beside framed Bible verses.
No! Oh my god, stop, I can't.
With the main one being repeated, Jeremiah 1:5. Shall we repeat it?
No.
Before I formed you in your mother's womb, I knew you. So creepy. Oh, there's so many red flags, but like back then you don't see them as red flags. That's a phrase that like really tweaks me, because again, I am very religious. I believe there's a higher power, whatever. And I live my life by those standards. But one of the things that used to pet peeve me growing up, oh, he's a godly man. Oh, he's a nice Christian man. He's a nice, religious man. Like that excuses him from, like, literally my mom said that about somebody who sexually assaulted me. And I'm like,
oh,
if you knew him, just because he goes to church every Sunday and he leads Bible group, like that doesn't excuse that. It's not who he is. And like that just, but like, that's what this gives me. This gives me, oh, he's such a godly Christian man. Like he would never use his own semen to help conceive babies. Anyway, so White and her husband had tried to conceive for 2.5 years by the time they had sought Dr. Cline's help. They had already seen another doctor who had attempted insemination with a frozen donor sperm, but that didn't work. And also, I don't have price tags here, but I know in vitro is just insanely expensive now. Back then I can't imagine. So when that didn't work, the doctor recommended Dr. Cline because he uses fresh sperm, and that has a much higher success rate.
Wait. So is he just like No, I don't want to.
Oh, you're gonna know.
Does he just go into like a back room, whacks one off, and like uses that to like? Is that what he? Okay, continue.
This is why I can't believe you've never heard of this. Dr. Cline informed them that he would be able to find a medical resident whose appearance and blood type matched White's husband. He also said that he would not tell anybody, even their future child, about the sperm donation, because they didn't want their child to know. Mrs. White, who is now 66, told a reporter that Dr. Cline had inseminated her 15 times during their 5-month treatment process. She had even gone to his office. She would go 3 days when you're ovulating each month, no matter if it was on a weekend or not. She reported that she would be lying there in a gown and the clinic would otherwise be empty. And now, looking back, her mind wonders what he was doing when he went next door to get the sample. She thought of him in his office, and as a former clinical social worker, she kind of slips, you tell in the interview, she slips into like a clinical language to describe her thoughts. She's disassociating because thinking, you know what I mean? A man's mind following completion. There was a different word there. There's a lot of dopamine and a lot of serotonins. All those are mood enhancers, and that would bring wonderful feelings for men. She continued, when we came in for a medical procedure, theoretically, if this was happening the way she was thinking, he would be feeling those things while impregnating her. More than 3 decades later, she confesses she feels like she was sexually assaulted 15 times. So, out of that, though, Matt White was born. Matt White was born in 1982. His mother chose that name because it was a gift from God. And that's how she thought of the sperm donation at the time. That being said, Matt had already known that he was donor conceived. Back in high school biology class, he actually realized that his blood type didn't match either of his parents. So he figured it out himself. Also, should have been a red flag, because he sat down with his parents and was like, yo, our blood type doesn't match. I don't think, I know I figured out what happened. Just like, let me know, fill in the blanks. None of them realized that at the time, Dr. Cline had promised that the donor's blood type would match Matt's father's.
Right.
Nobody really put that back together. Matt did feel really bad for his father back then. But again, the revelation didn't really provoke any deep identity crisis. And his mother would sometimes point out the building as they drove down 86th Street in Indianapolis, say, "Oh, that's where I got pregnant with you." She always thought of it as a really joyous place.
Right.
After Matt saw Dr. Cline in the news, he looked up the old office address, and it was Dr. Cline's old office. He then took a DNA test, and it confirmed what he had already thought, that he was one of Dr. Cline's children. Over the next year, I'll break it down a little bit, Matt and his newly discovered half-brothers and sisters watched the criminal case against Cline unfold. He wasn't able to be charged with rape because there was consent for the insemination, and there was no force. Force was the big one. The state only considered it to be a crime if it was done in a, and this is a quote, in a rude, insolent, or angry manner.
Rude. It was rude. It was definitely rude.
So rude. Also, he wasn't charged with any criminal deception because all the records are gone. They're all destroyed.
I am so angry right now.
In fact, Dr. Cline wasn't charged for anything he did almost 4 decades ago. No law in Indiana, or any states for that matter, specifically forbids a doctor from using his own sperm in his patients. Prosecutors were finally able to charge Dr. Cline with something, though.
Okay.
They got him for something.
Okay.
2 counts of obstruction of justice. Finally, the the Attorney General's office responds, and they respond by basically sending Dr. Cline a letter like, "Hey, people are sussing you over this." And he had written back saying, "I never used my own sperm. And any woman saying that is guilty of slander."
A lie.
So they were able to easily prove that. They showed up at Dr. Cline's house with a search warrant for his DNA. They swabbed his mouth. So they got him for 2 counts of obstruction of justice.
Which is like a slap on the wrist.
You got a couple fines.
Got a couple fines.
I'm gonna need you to try to keep your anger. I should have given you a squish ball because this is gonna really piss you off.
Oh no. Okay.
Personally, I think one of the most infuriating things that while I was reading and watching is how Dr. Cline used his faith as a deflection. Everyone who knew him personally knew him as a very religious man. I think we touched base on this.
Yeah. Okay.
During his sentencing, several elders from his church wrote letters to the state about what an outstanding citizen he was.
Gross.
His friends and family members wrote letters to the judge about how difficult it must have been for him to disappoint his patients when a donor couldn't be found. So he was just doing the right thing.
No. The right thing is like, I'm sorry, we don't have a donor right now, but we'll schedule you again for next month. Like,
this is a quote from a friend of the note. Dr. Cline always pushed his patients first. Empathetic and full of compassion, he sought ways to help families through their most tender period when both husband and wife feel helpless. We can also empathize with the couples waiting expectantly because the time is right, and can understand the devastation that would wash upon them if there were no viable sperm donor at that critical moment. So Dr. Cline was ultimately fined $500 and given a year of probation. He eventually ended up losing his medical license, but he had been retired since 2009, so it didn't matter that he used his... What is crazy to me is that if he hadn't replied to the Attorney General's letter,
they wouldn't have been able to get him for anything.
He didn't need to. He had no obligation to reply to them.
Except for his ego.
Mm-hmm.
That's it. That's...
Mm-hmm.
This has, from start to finish, this has been about his ego.
Yep.
Oh.
So based I'm almost done. So based on the birth dates of his youngest known donor, Dr. Cline stopped using his own sperm in the late 1980s. which so happens to be when sperm banks became more common. Many of the children Cline fathered still live in Indianapolis, some only blocks away from their biological father, where they find themselves accidentally running into his family, half brothers and sisters. And like in the documentary, they literally put like a public service announcement, like, if you even think you went to this clinic or your parents went to this clinic, please take a DNA test, because people were worried that you would start dating half siblings. I mean,
that's so crazy, dude. Like,
it could seriously like pose a real problem. And like I said, watch documentary is insane, because it just keeps the way that it's directed. I kind of want to watch it with you after this, actually. The way that it's directed is like like it's so good. So anyways, basically Dr. Cline finally admitted to using his own sperm about 50 times. At the time, and this the biggest, I'd say the biggest influence of this was the Atlantic's 2019 article. That's where I got a lot of my information from. Again, I watched the documentary, which was really good too. So at that time, he was in his 80s. He's still living in his hometown of Indianapolis, Indiana. He has been keeping a low profile and still wildly has many supporters in this community.
Why? Because he's a godly man. He reads the Bible.
As of today, Dr. Cline and his group, Indianapolis Infertility Inc., has now settled 3 civil cases filed by 3 of the donor children and their families, so make you happy, for more than $1.3 million. And 3 other cases are pending. So these are civil cases that are getting approved. And so families are getting
what they did,
some money back. I don't know. Yeah. Are you ready for this? This is the kicker. It is officially proven that he is the father to at least 94 children. And that number continues to rise. So that's it for this episode.
Then that's totally more than 50 times, unless like people had like twins. And
he never told the truth.
That's
he never told the truth.
But he's such 8. A Christian, godly man.
Mm-hmm. And there is, so like the kids have made the best of a shitty situation.
Right.
They actually will get together on Father's Day, and they've made it like now it's like an annual picnic on Father's Day. They'll get together.
Which ironically is today.
That's true. It is today.
We're recording this on Father's Day.
Oh my god, that is true. I didn't even think about that. Oh my god, that's funny. But yeah, like they'll each bring something. It says Matt brings chicken wings and sweats all over the grill, like cooking them because it's a hot day. Their kids run through sprinklers and climb trees, and like it's just from afar, it looks like a typical family reunion.
Nah, they're all fathered by one disgusting man.
And they have to like they put name tags on, because some like each year they have more
new ones.
But yeah, they're all in like a family like a group, like a Facebook group.
So if you're from Indianapolis, please go get your DNA tested.
Go get DNA tested.
Oh my god, that's so insane, dude.
Right?
Wow.
Yeah. Yeah, that's my story. Jesus. And like, so each family kind of deals with it differently, which is again is why I would suggest the documentary goes into like not each individual family.
Obviously that's 74 like, families.
But like each person kind of dealt with it differently.
Right.
You know, a lot of them had identity crises when they first found out, because they were some of them didn't even realize they weren't their parents, you know what I mean?
Right.
Even some parents went in thinking they were using the father's sperm. So the fathers thought they were parents. They were, until they got the DNA test back. So they were fully aware that they thought they were the parents. So, you know, it was hard. It's hard to be lied to, and I am glad that people are bringing civil cases to it, because
yeah, at this point that's like the only thing they can do.
Anyway, hey guys, that's it for this podcast. If you enjoyed, please don't forget to follow and leave a review. If you're watching on YouTube, hi! Please like and subscribe. It helps. You can also find us on Twitter and Instagram and TikTok. Our username is TTATA podcast on those things. Definitely check out TikTok because we have been posting like behind the scenes, or we will post behind the scenes stuff. And bloopers. I think we have some of those coming out this week because there's a lot of bloopers. Next week we're gonna be covering abandoned places, which I'm really excited for. I got a good one, and I know you do too. And with that, we're gonna leave you with this.
All right, so this quote is actually from a book that I just finished reading yesterday. I don't know if anybody's heard of the Guild series. It's basically like a Midas retelling. So Midas was the person who like touched things turned to gold. It's a really good book series. I'm on book 3 already. But I really liked this quote when I read it, and so like I highlighted it in my book. But here it goes. So, the truth. Such a complicated thing. The problem with truths is that they're like spices. Add a little and it can enrich things, let you experience more layers. But if you pour out too much, it becomes unpalatable.
Ooh. Also the Guild is a it's not young adult.
No, it's an adult
so don't
book.
read it until you're old. It's for mature audiences.
I
As
mean,
are we,
you think our audience is not mature?
I know.
I just thought
you guys better be mature.
That's an interesting quote because it's so true. Like,
it is. No, 100%. Yeah, guys. Thanks for hanging out with us. It was fun. I hope you enjoyed it. We'll see you next week. Bye. Bye.